and they're willing to share their experiences that led them through this pandemic. So first, I would like to introduce Catherine Mattice-Zundel. She is the founder, CEO of Civility Partners, an HR consulting firm focused specifically on helping organizations create respectful and positive workplace cultures. She has helped Fortune 500 companies all the way down to small businesses across industries and has appeared on venues such as USA Today, Bloomberg, CNN, and NPR. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Wil Quintong. He is our County of San Diego representative. Wil is the officially appointed Military and Veterans Affairs Officer for the County of San Diego and has been since August 2015. Wil has been an effective leader in various organizations, including serving 28 years in the United States Navy as a surface warfare officer. Thank you for being here, Wil.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Next, I want to introduce Anna Crowe. She is the founder and CEO of Crowe PR, a recognized public relations and marketing expert, best-selling author, and speaker. Anna has 20 years in the public relations industry and has worked for iconic brands in New York, Los Angeles, and San Diego. She is leading a bi-coastal public relations marketing agency. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Next, we have James Everett Lee. He is the COO of the respected Identity Theft Resource Center that offers free assistance to victims of identity theft crimes and has been doing that for 20 years. As a global corporate executive, James is a subject matter expert who consults with companies on how privacy and security regulations impact business operations. He also serves as an expert witness in business identity theft litigation. And he's also a Washington Nationals fan.
Let's go Nats. Well, that would be the world champion, Washington Nationals.
Exactly.
And then finally, we have Melissa Esten. She is the Director of Workforce Development at Goodwill Industries of San Diego since 2013. Melissa has helped organizations create comprehensive learning programs through strategic planning, coaching, training, and team development. Now, welcome, Melissa.
Thank you.
I just want to say that my little 2-sentence introduction to our panelists doesn't do their resumes justice. So if you want to learn more about them, you can find that information on our website. Welcome, everybody. So, as Gwen mentioned before, this is part 3 of the series. And what we're hoping to do today is use the experience from our panelists, their vast experience on winning leadership strategies that they can share with us that hopefully you can take back and implement in your organizations. So I have some questions that I'm going to start with, and these are to the panel. So the first question I'm going to start off with is, what strategies have you created from what you've learned during the pandemic? And Will, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Pre-COVID, we had, our main goal is to connect with veterans and provide them the benefit counseling so they can get their disability claims. And when the pandemic occurred, it prevented us from seeing veterans face to face. So we had to think of a more innovative way to try to get this mission done with veterans, and we did it through virtual interviewing and virtual counseling, which we do with our Vet Connect program, but not at this extent. I think what the pandemic created was it moved us forward 15, 20 years, where we were already looking at what they call government without walls. So it just advanced what we were going to try to do anyway in the future. Now, here's the really quirky thing. Because of the virtual counseling, we've done better than post-COVID counseling. Numbers of veterans we're seeing, number of claims that we're preparing. We're doing more now because one of my veteran service reps in the South region now be counseling a veteran in Oceanside. So we're able to pool our resources and be more efficient and more effective. And our numbers show that. We've been tracking our numbers ever since the pandemic started, and we're well above the averages pre-COVID. Now, we also see, believe it or not, we see better efficiency from our employees. Working from home, you tend to think they're going to be distracted, but no, that's not the case. So it's been an eye-opener for us.
Thank you, Will. Catherine, what do you have on this?
Yeah, I have a couple things. So I'm a consultant rather than internal, so my answer might be geared more towards others on the call who are also external and experiencing some of this or doing some of the same types of things I'm doing. I know one strategy we came up with when we were working from home is my team and I, and this sounds awful, but bear with me. My team and I would be on Zoom together all the time, which could sound like I'm a micromanager, which I am not. And I know it could come across that way, maybe if I was a bully or, you know, had a poor relationship with my team. But because my team and I are so close and we're all great friends and we really enjoy interacting with each other, we were just talking about it yesterday, actually, that the fact that we were on Zoom all the time really made a difference rather than just like our scheduled one-on-one meeting. Instead, what we were doing was just, hey, I'm going to be on Zoom for the next couple hours. Do you want to pop on? And maybe we weren't even talking to each other. We were just, you know, working, but it sort of emulated the ability to have those little random conversations where sometimes the best ideas occur versus a forced innovation meeting where let's get together and innovate about this thing. You know, sometimes that it comes better just naturally through those sort of random conversations. So I haven't heard anybody else do that. And I understand it, again, it could come across as micromanaging, and you definitely would have to have the right relationship with your team to do something like that. One other strategy I can speak to is the marketing strategy. You know, I'm a culture consultant and I do a lot of webinars and trainings in order to earn clients. And I used to stand out as a really stellar webinar deliverer, but now there's billions of more people delivering webinars. It's a lot harder to stand out, as good as I am. So I didn't really have that epiphany until just a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I was talking to the woman who did my website, and as I was saying it, I was like, oh gosh, that is the truth. So really having to figure out new marketing tactics for myself, because the really trusty delivering webinars and getting leads from it has just not been working because there's a bazillion webinars to choose from. And also, if you're in a virtual conference, before you had the attention of the room and they could feel your vibe, and you really could build that relationship. But now, if you're in a virtual conference, you might be speaker number 6. They've already lost interest and the audience is already off doing other things. And so it's just that impact isn't there. So one of the marketing tactics we've really dove into was doing more online learning. So for example, I'm a LinkedIn learning instructor, and I do a lot of other learnings where I build training and then deliver it on other platforms like Udemy, et cetera. So we've really been going after that, which is a nice kind of royalties that come through each month as well. So those are some of the things we've been doing.
Awesome. So using Zoom to mimic a office environment. That's great.
Yeah.
James, I'd like you to chime in on this one.
The interesting thing for our organization, because we run a call center as well as standard operations, but our call center has always been physically located, and they would learn from listening to each other. You know, because we had just hired a couple of new people, and they were new to their roles. And since we are dealing with either people who are the victims of crime or people who have, they suspect they're the victim of crime, or they're trying to determine, exactly what may or may not have happened with their identities. You come across a wide range of people. They're everything from this is a life-altering event to they're just casually curious, gosh, I lost my wallet, what should I do, kind of thing. And for those people in the call center, we were very concerned that lack of access to one another, literally being able to listen over the cube wall, would impact them. What we have learned is being remote and having tools like Zoom, but also having Slack and other ways where they can chat with each other remotely, it's much more efficient. To Will's point, what we found is our productivity has gone through the roof. Now, along with demand, but if demand had come in the sharp rise that it did in some other circumstance, we probably would not have been as mentally prepared to deal with this. So the concept of the governor's order to work from home, and we beat it by about a week. We pulled out remote about a week ahead of time. So we had the mental mindset that this is going to be different and we're going to work remotely. We had all the tools in place, and the team naturally gravitated to using those tools to keep up that same sort of listening over the wall, but now using technology. And as a result of that, their productivity has gone through the roof. So these are all things we're going to keep in place. If we were back in the office today, which we're not, we have made the determination. We're not even going to make a determination until at least Labor Day. And then, if we pass Labor Day, it's probably January before we go back. But, what we've learned is these tools are very effective in helping us, do our mission. And we're ready to keep ramping up.
I find it interesting that how telecommuting has actually made productivity go up. So that's interesting. Thank you, James. Melissa, let's go with you.
Yeah, I would echo so much of what people are saying here, in that the effectiveness, the productivity, things that we never knew that we could do, because now we have this virtual platform. And as Will said, able to get to people in ways that we hadn't before. And just as James said, our own productivity. So what happened is we took strategies that we were starting to develop just as we were before shelter in place. A lot of our career path strategies, developing new supervisors, as well as our onboarding strategies, department onboarding strategies. And we put them into full effect when we began to reopen. So we actually had to be in a process of laying off 90% of the workforce. And then as we reopened, needed to onboard several new employees whom we call ambassadors, several new ambassadors at the same time in retail, as well as new supervisors. There had been some restructuring in terms of positioning and such, so these new supervisors needed to onboard fairly quickly as well. So we were able to still maintain our culture and our mission of wanting to develop our ambassadors and invest in their training. We did it though in a very much more strategic way. So we really pivoted. We changed our curriculum to be able to go on a virtual platform. We were able to be really proactive. So oftentimes when people are in operations and they're trying to get everything going, they may not be thinking first and foremost, how do we get people trained? So learning and development, we were able to come in and work across the board with departmental leaders and say, hey, here's the plan. We can get people onboarded quickly to really know the skills, and as well as the cultural expectations. If we do this with our onboarding, as well as our corporate onboarding, as well as we do this with our hands-on training, actually on site, with being able to provide that support. With new supervisors, we're able to do a virtual learning on Fridays to get them started with an action plan so that they can continue their coaching and training on site. So all of those things we were able to just basically accelerate. I think that was a key term of COVID, is accelerate the strategy, but it really took time to pivot. It also took, you had to be proactive. People weren't knocking on your door. You had to go knock and say, hey, how do we install this strategy? And also, and I think one that was really counterintuitive is that you, in this very rushed environment, you had to be patient. we found ourselves, one person had an idea of a model of how we wanted to onboard all of our new hires in retail. The strategy wasn't going to quite work, but it took some patience for people to discover that, for us to be able to use our, excuse me, our other strategy of the 3-month onboarding that we had started before COVID. So, but all of these really actually have made us more productive and really made us more intentional in our training of leaders.
Awesome, thank you. Anna, what do you have for us?
Of course. So much like some of the other panelists, I think the communication piece has been a big part of it, and taking everything virtually. We're in the public relations and marketing arena, so in professional services and in the relationship business. So the big part of it was traveling. My team and I would travel. We have clients across the US, in parts of Europe and Australia. And so a big part of it was getting to know our clients better, as well as reporters, journalists, producers. That was just something that was part of our nature, going to trade shows, right? And so we were obviously able to take that virtually. We continued with setting up coffee meetings through Zoom, similarly using all the technology. We have a leadership series that we started online. And we also found new ways to connect with new people through a webinar that we started. So we have a webinar called Talk Birdie to Me, which uses a lot of Crowe puns, of course. And we started a podcast, a video podcast, where we get to interview new people for 10 minutes at a time. And we've gotten through, I think, about 50 people in just a couple of weeks, just getting to know them. So replacing that, that travel, replacing those trade shows, et cetera, and continuing the relationship, continuing creating authentic connections, which is really important. And then on the business side, strategically, I found that diversification is really not just a buzzword. We have to diversify. And that's from the types of services that we offer to the types of industries that we're able to support. I agree with the sentiment of moving fast. I think we would all say that each week seems like a month has passed. There's a lot of activity and a lot of even emotional changes throughout the week. So part of the strategy is also tapping more into self-awareness, tapping more into EQ, and figuring out that everybody's dealing with this in a different way, and we have to be mindful of that as we continue to move forward with the business. So those are just some of the things that we've implemented, and I look forward to seeing how this shapes and evolves. Definitely a lot of great takeaways for the future and how we're going to be doing business come 2021.
Thank you. So I find it's interesting the way we how do we connect without the travel? So thank you for mentioning that. So my next question for the panel, and this is for the panel, is what are methods your company is using to drive the culture in this new reality? And Anna, so why don't you go ahead and start us off with this one? I know you just spoke, but
Sure.
How about you go first this time?
No worries, thank you. So our company is really driven by core values, and it sounds like you may have even had a webinar on that. And so for us, it's a culture of excellence, authenticity, relationships, results, having a growth mindset, just to name a few. So it was really important for us to keep in line with those core values and really celebrate and support one another as much as possible in the new remote workplace. So obviously there's a big difference between culture and perks and benefits and all of those. And at first, when everything happened, it was very jarring for a lot of people, a lot of my team, because it was, even though we were virtual once a week, we used to be work from home Fridays, all of a sudden overnight we went to a full setup, right? So you now had to work with your partner or roommate or animals or kids in the same space. And how do we maintain productivity? How do we maintain the culture? Were all the questions we were asking. So I mentioned virtual learning. So we started a virtual leadership series. Again, going back to my puns, we titled it Grow with Crowe, and we utilized the time to discuss productivity, how to manage change better, how to tap into each other for support, how to give feedback, how to do all these things and keep our culture of authenticity, commitment to excellence, and all those other values in this new environment. We also had a robust wellness plan that we implemented just earlier in the year. We got gym membership at this really great gym for a whole company. So now we had to translate that into a virtual environment. So we had volunteers from the team who would lead yoga classes or let someone know through Teams that we were joining another class at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And the other piece of that is flexibility. there's no 9 to 5. I mean, in our profession, there's really never a 9 to 5 because we're driven by the news cycle, and we work with customers from all over the world. But we have to be in tune with our energy levels. We have to be understand one another, that when we're more productive, when we're least productive, and make sure that we are communicating that very clearly, and we're managing up and we're managing down, and we're being really over communicative with one another to ensure that our culture is not impacted in any negative way. So those are just some of the things that we've been doing. And then, again, I don't know if this is culture or perk, but we started a virtual book club where we resurrected it from last year. We're doing happy hours and other things to connect with one another on a regular basis.
Awesome. Thank you. Melissa, what do you have?
Very, very similar to our core values. One of them is collaboration, and that was so critical during this different times. For us, it's almost like COVID was in stages. So that first, be able to shelter in place and what that meant for our business and each of our departments, and then moving into a time period of preparing to reopen. So our leadership made sure that we were meeting on a regular basis, weekly, as on the leadership level, leaders and executives on a daily basis, so that we could just keep tabs, because things would be changing and information would be coming and going so quickly. So that really helped us also know how to respond to the different needs. Like Wil, we also have a whole mission side where we had moved all of our workshops to a virtual platform. So that was a big focus, that first stage of COVID. And then it shifted to reopening stores and rehiring. So those weekly meetings, those daily, and then we went to basically 3 times a week, and then being able to go like once a week. But really, ironically, it really was the virtual platform that allowed us to continue in our culture and be able to continue to increase communication, that collaboration, and we still do it. Well, we have greater collaboration across departments and in new ways that we've even experienced them before because of that virtual platform.
Awesome. So James, what do you have?
I think the from a culture perspective, we're a relatively small group. We're 15 people, but it's we routinely punch above our weight class, and we attribute most of that to the fact that we have a strong culture. So we've done everything that the normal things that people are doing. We have a daily Zoom call with everyone to go over what are the priorities for the day, what the outcomes from the previous day, a little look ahead. And we've done the things to, have some sort of the fun things that we can do on Zoom. We may have a virtual wine tasting or a virtual happy hour or something like that. But we've also kept up with, to the degree that we can, with the kind of institutional culture things that recognize people. So we stay with the recognition, the work anniversaries, the birthdays.
Mm-hmm.
We send what we'd normally do in the office, we send it to their homes. So we do things like that. And we encourage people, again, to just continue to collaborate, because that is such a core component of our culture. Continue to collaborate outside of these formal kinds of things. I got to tell you though, longer term, that is probably our number one concern, particularly as, if we get into a period of not that it hasn't been a long term anyway, but if it becomes an extended time away from the office, or it becomes a working remote becomes a core component of how we do business, which is another possibility, particularly with our call center folks. How do you maintain that kind of culture that we have banked on for so many years if we're not all physically together? Even if we were in the office together today, based on the recommendations from the county health department and the CDC and everything else, we would barely have room for the people that are on the team today. We have expansion plans, so we don't know how we would accommodate physically more people. Because our space is not designed in a way that you can have proper social distancing. Plus, based on the way you're supposed to do things, even if you're in the office, we would all be on Zoom calls talking to the people in the office next door. So
That's true.
So I think there are some from a short-term perspective, we're pretty happy with how we have preserved our culture, and we've built in these new kind of rituals or adapted our existing rituals, which are so important to culture. But long-term, we've got to figure out new ways of doing that. This creates an artificial environment. Any multi-location company, any multinational company deals with this every day. Your boss is in another city and you're happy about that. For small businesses and small teams, it's a new thing, and it is a culture changing event. So it is something that has to be done as a conscious decision and not just fall into it.
Thank you, James. Catherine, let's hear your perspective on this as a consultant.
All right, so as I mentioned, I'm going to get on my soapbox. Hang on. Civility Partners, it's our job to drive culture for our clients. That's what we do. We're culture consultants. So I have a pretty different perspective, just given my experience dealing with toxic work cultures as well. So there are a lot of similarities with the toxic work cultures I go into and the COVID work culture, which is people are burnt out. People have different levels of sort of tolerance for what's happening. People have opposing views about is COVID real or not? Should we wear a mask or not? All these different things. And that's what I see a lot of when I go into toxic work environments. And so with that in mind, I think, James, as you just said, it's not about preserving the culture that you had. It's really about rethinking your culture and what is it going to look like moving forward. So yes, obviously preserve what you had, but be thinking about the future. So for example, it's pretty clear here in San Diego that safety is going to be something that has to be a part of our culture, right? So I'm in an office, I have HR consultants here. Safety is not one of our core values. It's never mentioned in any of our core values. So far, the only thing that we have related to safety is our mandatory kind of playbook that's on by the door and our different protocols. But that's just compliance, right? So if we're going to we have to infuse safety into the culture. So that has to be, maybe it's a core value, or, you add it to a core value, but safety has to be something that we start to figure out how do we infuse into our day-to-day, so it's more than just the sign on the wall. We would be remiss if we weren't talking about Black Lives Matter with this as well. So Black Lives Matter also brings in this other element. So you have two things really challenging psychological safety: COVID and Black Lives Matter. And you have a bunch of employees who are scared for either or both reasons. And so, I think as you're talking about reopening, for example, or creating your reopening plans, you have to include inclusivity in that. You can't ignore that. So it's not just your COVID reopening plan, it's COVID and inclusivity. And even before Black Lives Matter hit the fan, there was already a lot of talk and research about the fact that certain groups are definitely more impacted by COVID than others. So those folks who were more greatly impacted, who can't feed their families because they had to be laid off or what have you, they need to be included too. So we've been talking about these two separate events as something that you have to resolve together because they both create the same type of a problem. And I'll just get off my soapbox with this last comment. Organizations that sent out the kind of the template email that said Black lives do matter and we don't tolerate discrimination, and then that's kind of all they did. Those companies have really ruined their employer branding, because what that message says is we weren't listening, and I don't know anything about what Black Lives Matter was really about. So those are the types of things that I've been talking to my clients about is reopening with psychological safety in mind, thinking about inclusivity. Don't send out that template email. You have to do some action. Those are my thoughts about culture.
Thank you, Catherine. And Wil, coming from the county, which is a large organization, what are you seeing at the county and specifically in your little unit that you manage?
Yeah, Tom, the county from day one has embraced this new, I guess, the new norm is what they're saying,
Mhm.
where we're doing a lot of things virtual. Um, in my shop, it's a matter of serving our veterans, and we deal with a wide range of generational veterans, from some World War II, Vietnam veterans to our new Afghanistan and Iraq veterans. So, the older veterans, obviously, we thought they were going to have an issue with doing things virtually, but we found that they're embracing it as well as the younger veterans. So one of the biggest issues that county leadership had with regards to doing things virtually was the fact uh, that are we doing it with quality? Because when you start thinking about doing things virtually, the thought is you're not really doing as good a job if you're seeing someone face to face. But that has not been the case, and the only way to back that up is with data. So the county is strong on data. We report numbers every day, how many clients we see, how many applications we receive, how many applications are approved through the VA, through the state. So it's tracking data, and data is very important, especially now that we're this is a new norm, and we've already seen that we're not going to go back to full time in the office. We may start off with a hybrid where we do some teleworking and some in the office, but eventually we're probably going to wean off face to face, and only for those special cases will we have a veteran in our office seeing them face to face. So yes, it is a culture shift, and the word that I'm going to use, and I know everyone will agree, is trust. So it's very important during this time where we're doing virtual leadership, etc., that trusting is a key. And if you let your employees know how good they're doing on a daily basis, here's your numbers, you're doing great, because uh, the past way of doing leadership, where you've all heard it, leadership by walking around. Well, it's leadership by seeing everyone on the screen, and we just have to ensure that we keep our people motivated. And the only way to do that is to keep patting them on the back and letting them know what a great job they're doing, and maintain their passion for what they're doing. And in my business, it's about the passion of helping veterans. So we're keeping that up.
Sure.
Thank you, Will. So we have about 10 minutes before we get to the open Q&A. So I have a couple of questions that I'm going to address specific panel members. And the first question is, how have you adjusted performance expectations? Someone said earlier that there is no more 9 to 5. So how have you adjusted performance expectations for employees? And I'm going to address this to Will and Melissa. So Melissa, why don't you go first?
Right. So it's a great question. And some of those things, some of the decisions about performance were really made on an executive level of, being our front facing was retail, and where our retail funds our particular mission. So definitely the goals changed from pre-COVID to after COVID, just the reality of opening stores and the time pace and revenue goals. I think also we also adjusted mission goals, but as Will said, we actually exceeded those because the new platform allowed us to meet up with so many particular people. Now, personally, for my own team, as we were working to support our colleagues and other departments, I really want to be honest in saying that the work actually increased. And the reason it did is because we had to pivot so quickly And the learning curve was sharp. I think Anna mentioned that, the learning curve is sharp. And so literally you would live a week and you thought you lived a month, just because of all of the things that you needed to do differently. The part that we did though is we did it together. So there was never a time of feeling, okay, you do that and get back to me whenever. It was, how do we tackle this together? What will make this the best product that we can give our internal customers? And then what's next to be able, what we need to anticipate for the next turn, because we made so many adjustments. And I want to add that to this part about workload and to Will's comment about leadership. I really felt that leadership really was anticipating the turn in the road. I felt that's what I could give my team, is to think, okay, we sheltered in place, we closed, but now we're going to open and we're going to bring back our ambassadors again, and they're not going to be used to having a mask. Their whole world has changed and how they work has changed. How do we prepare them for that? Okay, so we got them prepared. Okay, now we're going to need to start developing our leaders when they come back. What's that going to look like? So if I could help to anticipate and work with some directors that also anticipated, that helped chart the course for the team better so that they felt more support in knowing what was expected of them and what they could achieve.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, so the county has a specific rubric for performance indicators. So how's the county adjusted on this?
Well, because they're performing much better, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a matter of data. Making sure that you have the data to show their improvement. I have expectations for my veteran service reps that they can probably see between 6 and 8 clients a day via virtual. Now, some clients require more time in counseling and preparing their documents, but the expectation is that they continue to do quality work. Now, they may not be able to see 6 to 8 clients a day because they're an hour each, but as long as they're seeing clients, and the overall county wait time for a client to be seen by a county veteran service rep is, right now, it's 1 week. Back in October and November of last year, we were at 8 to 10 weeks for a client to actually be counseled by a veteran service rep. With us being able to do things virtually, now our wait times are below 2 weeks and really down to 1 week. So how do I measure that performance? I look at that. Number one is, what's our wait times? Number two, how many applications are we getting done and submitting? So again, it's about the number, the quantity, but it's also about the quality. So we need to make sure that we are submitting quality packages for our veterans and that they're getting the benefits that they deserve. So hard and to maintain communication with each, now I'm saying each one of your employees is important. And if you see a dip in their performance where they're not seeing as many clients, maybe they weren't as efficient in following up with a client, then that's when you have to sit down and talk to them and let them know that, hey, we can do better, et cetera, et cetera. No different from when we were seeing veterans face to face. But now it's important that we connect with them and really know that we are caring and that we are monitoring how well we're doing as a team. So remember that word, team.
Thank you, Will. So this next question is for James, Anna, and Melissa. During times of scarcity, how do we keep focus on the mission? And Anna, let's start with you.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's a great question. I think what I've learned over the years is, when you talk about motivation, I think the best people don't need a ton of extra motivation when they're in the right position and in the right company. Of course, they have to be aligned with the business's mission and the goals. They've got to, respect and appreciate the people that they work with. And as Will said, they've got to be passionate about the work, right? So for us, we're passionate about two things. We're passionate about helping businesses grow and thrive and be successful so they can create opportunities and jobs, and they can improve the world, whether it's technology, consumer products, or other service businesses. And we're passionate about building the best mid-sized PR marketing agency where we have excellent culture and we have a strong support system and opportunities for growth. And so if we're all aligned on that, right, we have to now replicate this in this new environment. We've got to make sure that we're continuing to collaborate. I love that word. We continue to be open and transparent with one another, ask for help, communicate challenges. Not to use the cliche, we're all in it together, but in a strong corporate environment, we have to be in it together. There's no I in team. I can use a million cliches here, right? But we have to have those conversations, be open and transparent, and create a strong support system for one another. People are going to be handling this differently, and there's going to be days that are just very challenging, even on a personal level, right? Someone may have a family member impacted, or we may have lost a client, and that I saw in the chat there was some talk about financial. Absolutely. We work with 4 different types of industries, and one of them is hospitality. So back in March, we saw our clients suffer tremendously. They laid off more than 80% of their staff in 2 weeks. And that takes a mental toll on us as humans as well as professionals, because here we are trying to help them and grow and do all these things for them. And they're struggling to make ends meet. So our job is to help rebuild them. Our job is to be their partner and see them through the good and the bad times. And that's motivating, right? Because for our employees, because they're passionate about that, and to be there for one another. So I know it goes back to a lot of communication, but also offering the tools and knowing that we have to take it day by day sometimes. And the expectations may be a little bit different depending on what's going on with our employees.
Thank you. And I made a mistake, Melissa. I meant for this question to be for Catherine. So
Sure, no problem.
So Catherine, from your perspective, how do you keep your clients and your team focused on the mission despite all of this?
Yeah, well, I'll echo a lot of what Anna said. Excited to meet you, Anna, and would love to chat with you more about what you're doing in your company. I love case studies of good things. But yeah, the first thing you said was you don't have to deal with motivation so much as long as the right people are in the right positions in the right company. And I think that's absolutely true. So you're not having to really force the issue on motivation as much if you've got the right people. I have been talking with my clients a lot about setting real clear expectations to help with the motivation, because they are a little lost. One of my clients, for example, really focuses on billable hours. And so previously, if you didn't have at least 40 hours of billable each week, if not more, that was going to show up in your performance review. And so everybody knows billable hours, billable hours, billable hours. And so we had a conversation about, look, you don't have as many clients. Some of them have gone off, and, what's the expectation around billable hours? And, this boss is kind of he's a pusher and a, get it done kind of a boss. And so I really had to work with him to bring in some more humanity into the way that he speaks, and really talk about expectations from kind of a loving place that, hey, I'm relaxing on billable hours because I get it. You have kids at home, and you may not be able to work 8 hours, and maybe I don't have enough client work for you. And I think that was really motivating for them to see this side of him where he was really just being real with them. And I think too, any boss would do well to really talk openly about how they're feeling. Obviously, everything in moderation. Although sometimes I tell my team I'm cracking. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But to really say, gosh, this is hard on me too, and really make room for emotions, because I think there's a real paradigm shift now that we're facing where we're all kind of cracking. This is hard. And so I think that will motivate employees if they feel like you actually care about them as a person, which goes back to what I was saying earlier. You're reopening the workplace plan has to include psychological safety and inclusivity and all of that.
Thank you, Catherine. And James, so how are you keeping your team focused on the mission?
First, shout out to Anna for all the foul puns. And to keep us on track, ditto. I mean, I think between you know the comments there, I think you know we've outlined everything. I guess if I were to pull one little nugget out of all of that is, we as leaders also have to pay attention to ourselves and to our peer leaders. That you know we are focused so much on keeping our teams motivated, making sure that they have what they need and that they're getting their personal and professional needs met. We oftentimes, because just the nature of who leaders are, we tend to forget ourselves. But that's a mistake at a time like this, because we can easily get demotivated, and with that, as we all know, that flows downhill. So, you know, I think that's one thing that we have to be particularly sensitive to, because an engaged leader is going to lead to an engaged team. But if you disengage or you slow down, they're going to do the same thing.
Exactly. So lead by example. All right. Thank you, panel. So we're right about on time, and we're going to open it up to Q&A. And if you have any questions, you can type them out in the chat. Or if you want to ask the panel personally, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. So let's get to those questions.
I was starting to type my question out, but I'm not a great typist, so I'll go ahead and just call it out.
Okay.
So there was a lot of conversation about psychological safety and trust, and yes, that's absolutely necessary. My question to the team in this new virtual environment: how do you engage your team to have their voices heard as to what that psychological safety looks like to them as individuals and as a team and as a broader organization?
Do you have anybody specific, Julia, or
anyone who wants to take on that question and has a passion for that? Fine.
I can share a little bit there, kind of some immediate thoughts with that. I really, with my team, is one of the psychological concerns for them was just a job, you know, and also, is there going to be enough to do? And what is that job going to look like? So to be able to answer those questions and anticipate them and spend time with them and let them be honest with me and through all the different stages to voice their concern. And then as we brought on another team member, again, that concern. So and we do a weekly check base. We're actually on site. So we're able to actually meet in a room too at times. So it really is the very human factor of checking in and asking and literally in many ways taking the temperature. How are we doing? What's our plan? Here's the plan.
Thank you.
I'll add to it. I'll try to keep it brief. During, you know, as an HR professional, a lot of times I see clients, you know, they have their harassment prevention policy that says, tell me if you feel harassed. But if there isn't any psychological safety, then people are not going to tell you. And the same rule applies here. If you're not making it okay for people to say, I'm burning out, I need to take some time off, or I don't know what to do with my kids. Again, you have to make room for those emotions and that rawness that comes with where we're all at with both COVID and BLM. And you know, it's how you react to that. So if an employee says, I need some time off, I'm struggling, how are you going to respond to that? Are you going to let them do it and talk to them about it and let them know you care? Or is it, no, we've got to get work done? So it's really about your actions on a day-to-day basis and how do you respond to their subtle requests for psychological safety in the conversations that you have with them.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Okay, I'm looking at the, go ahead.
No, Tom, I was gonna say we had a question come through the chat. So along with the earlier topic of burnout, how many of you encourage your employees to take vacation?
I'll just say that I had one employee call and say she needed to resign because she couldn't manage work and client stuff and her kids, and her husband just left for deployment. And so she was calling to resign, and I said, take 2 weeks off and then let's talk and maybe just take a break. And so she did that. She went off the grid, and she called 2 weeks later and says, I'm back, I'm ready. I just needed that. So that's one example of that.
Yeah, I can chime in here. I think on my team, I have mostly women, and everyone is a bit of an overachiever, and that speaks to our just high commitment to excellence. And so it's really hard when you're at home 24/7 to delineate work and personal time, especially if you're in the same space. I mean, even I had that issue. I was in my bedroom for 4 months, and I had to move out of my bedroom, create a different home office. It was just really hard to delineate where the day ended and started. And so we've been really proactively saying to take days, just take a day. We've got sick days if you want to use it at that. Take vacation days. We are doing summer Fridays right now. So we switch on and off. Everybody gets every 2 weeks, half a day on Friday. And even that, just the ability to disconnect at 1 o'clock or maybe 1:30 or 2 and start the weekend early, knowing that work is being taken care of, has generated a lot of really great feedback, because again, it's just a few hours, but it makes a difference because you're able to disconnect. So absolutely, we have people traveling to see their families across the country who haven't been able to, obviously in the safe manner, but in the past may have only traveled for 5 days. Now they're going for 2 or 3 weeks, because it really doesn't matter where they're working. And as long as they're having that different connection that they need, it's absolutely necessary. So yeah, I think this is so important to take the time and to recognize it. And we've had employees that we've had to tell to take days off, because we've asked them, do you want a day? Do you want a day? Do you want a week? Nope, 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 nope. And then finally said, okay, it's not a suggestion. Please take this week or please take this day. And let's talk next week and see how everything's going.
Yeah. We've resorted to the forced relaxation as well, where we would just periodically just say, okay, everybody gets a day. You have to take it. You can take it between this date and this date, but you have to take a day off. And being very respectful of the fact that there's no line between home and office anymore. And so we've helped people. So if they don't have a suitable workspace, well, what do you need? Do you need a better chair? Do you need a small desk? Do you need a better monitor? What is it you need to make this all work? And we've accommodated that. So in this area, you've got to pay attention. But flexibility is key. But then you've also got to be able to just say, with all due respect to our friend over here, Catherine, in the HR world, you kind of have to overlook some of the rules occasionally and say, just take a day and don't tell me. I mean, I don't care how many PTO hours you have, go away. And come back refreshed, renewed, and ready to go. Because they stress about that. They say, "Oh, I don't have the PTO, or I can't use the PTO." Yes, you can. I don't. I don't care. Go away. Because if you're not mentally prepared to deal with the issues you're dealing with, you're not any good to anybody, your family or to us. So go away.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everybody. And that brings us to the top of our hour. I hope that the people, our attendees, were able to take some of these nuggets and bring back to their organizations. And once again, I want to thank Melissa, Anna, James, Catherine, and Will for being here. And please take a look at our calendar for any new events, more events that are going to come up. And if anybody has any questions for us ATD people, I will hang out for a little while. Otherwise, thank you for attending.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.